Hey everyone, Marc de Bruin again from Simplifying Life. Today a quick discussion around emotions and feelings. Many people lump them together when they say that they feel anxious, depressed, enthusiastic, excited, whatever. They call that both a feeling and an emotion. And that's okay, of course you can do that in normal speech. That's pretty much how we see it. I actually adhere to a school of thought that separates the two quite substantially. And it's a school of thought that was pioneered by a neuroscientist, I think he is, Antonio Damasio, who actually says that emotions are different from feelings in the way they express. So let me explain that one real quick. I'll give you a bit of theory, and then we'll see how we can apply that. So emotions are what we would call the energy in motion, the E-motion. So emotions are the physical responses in your body on or about what's going on around you. So if you are confronted with a situation that you don't like and your fight flight brain kicks in, it starts sending adrenaline, cortisol through your system, and that will create all sorts of reactions in your body. Your heart rate will go up, your mouth will become dry, your hands might start trembling. There's all sorts of stuff happening. Now, Damasio in his school of thought says those are emotions. And they are actually energy in motion. You can feel them. It's actually something that nearly literally is moving. Now, not all bodily responses are emotions, obviously. If I have too much coffee and my heart starts to race, well, that's my heart racing, but that's not necessarily an emotion. But there's a little bit of importance to that. So we'll get to that one. So the energy in motion is the physical response that we get from our brain alerting us to something that's going on. Could be really positive, joy, satisfaction, excitement, lust, whatever you want to call it, or the negative stuff, anxiety, depression, anything that goes on in those realms. And whatever physiological response gets created in us, that's the energy emotion, the E-motion. Now the feeling is the one that comes on top of it. That's more a mental exercise based on that emotion. So if my heart starts to race, if I feel my throat constrict a little bit, if I can feel myself go sweaty, if my hands start to shake a little bit, I might say, I'm feeling anxious. Or if I can feel this tummy rumble going on, if I can feel my chest becoming a little bit tight, if I can feel my head start to expand, nearly explode, the blood is rushing in, I might say I'm feeling angry. So the feeling is the label that we stick on the physiological response. And those feelings are sometimes culturally determined. They might be our own. Some are natural. Fear is a natural response. It's just inbuilt in our system, but it's still the label that we stick on it based on what we're feeling. So when people come to me, and I had a session this morning with a lady who was feeling very overwhelmed with some areas in life, then we tend to say, well, what do I do with these feelings? And initially I would actually say, what can you do with those emotions? Because the emotions are the easiest one to start working with. Your body is sending out signals. So what you do with those signals is actually not that big a deal, as in you don't have to label them per se. So the mindfulness school of thought says, well, if for some reason there's a set of emotions coming through our system that we are aware of, can we just sit with that and actually allow that to just process as a bodily response because of a situation that we find ourselves in? And the only thing we really need to do in those circumstances, broader topic that I won't go into, is learn to accept that those feelings are taking place. We don't have to do anything with them. Where we often go off track as human beings is that we give those emotions a label. We say, oh, I'm so anxious. Now that's where we get into trouble, because as soon as we start to label them with something negative, we then go into a thought cycle and potentially a behavioural cycle in order to do something with those emotions, those feelings inside my body, those actual sensory feelings, in order to make it better or make it go away. Where if we start to put labels on them, our brain also starts to become more sensitive for signs of those labels happening in the future, if that makes sense. So as soon as you define something as anxiety, a certain set of physiological responses in your body, and you say that's anxiety, then there's a chance that next time you feel something similar, you'll say, oh, I'm so anxious. So if I know that anxiety, for instance, real simple example, comes with an elevated heart rate, then next time if I have too much coffee, and my heart rate starts to go up anyway just because of the caffeine in my system, I might actually start to link the two together. And if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it might be a duck, but it might not be a duck at all. But this is where we humans often go into that state of, well, I feel a particular way inside, so therefore I must be angry, sad, depressed, whatever ever. And generally, not generally, but not often is that the case. It's just a correlation of stuff. There's all sorts of stuff that can create physiological responses in our bodies. But when we start to stick those labels on there, that's when we can get into trouble. So what do you do with both? Well, emotions are there to be felt. And that's been the modern way of thinking about emotions anyway. Mindfully, can we become okay with whatever our body is doing and stay away as much as possible from sticking labels on there? Because the labels is where we go off the charts. Now, if we can do that, then we'll find that after a while, that emotion will peak, or that set of emotions, and will drop away and get replaced by something else, because we feel emotions all day long. But it has a natural lifespan, about 90 seconds to 120 seconds. So if we can write that right, then generally we'll start to feel better, quite some time. Good emotions don't stay either. They go away as well. Enthusiasm, passion, they all go. So that's one way to deal with emotions, and happy to talk more about that. The feelings is a different thing. The feelings, once we have dealt with those emotions, or maybe we haven't, but we're still stuck in this feeling, that leads us to behaving a particular way. So if I feel a heart palpitation, if I feel a tummy rumble, if I feel my face nearly explode, with tension, and I say, well, I'm angry or anxious, depending on how you interpret that feeling, and I then think that by having a couple of beers, couple of wines, or watching movies, or doing whatever, I can feel better, we get ourselves stuck in a very ineffective loop. So if feeling the emotions, sitting with them is one thing. Using, for instance, cognitive behavioral therapy, or a reappraisal of the feelings that we stick on those emotions, can lead us to seeing a situation in a totally different way. So instead of saying, well, I'm so anxious, like, well, maybe I'm not anxious, maybe my heart's just racing. Or maybe I am anxious and there's a good reason to be anxious, let's look at that. Or maybe what I'm feeling right now reminds me of something that I felt 20 years ago. I don't need to feel that anymore because I've grown up now and I'm seeing life different, so I don't have to react the same way. So we can do all sorts of thought reappraisals, cognitive restructuring, all sorts of fancy stuff that we do in cognitive behavioral therapy and in acceptance and commitment therapy as well. So once you start to rip them apart a bit, it becomes easier to deal with them in their individual formats. So emotions, remember that. Body responses, you'll feel them. Heart racing, stomach churning, neck tightening up, shoulders tightening up, jaw clenching, fist clenching, shaking, all that sort of stuff. That's what you'll feel, temperature going up or down. The feeling that we stick on it is the label we stick on our forehead based on what our bodies are expressing. And if we can take them aside and actually look at them individually, we can start to make more sense of stuff and allow feelings to be feelings to be feelings, emotions to be emotions, and not try and not lump them together and think we're caught up in this red hot mess that we can't get out of. So I hope that's useful. As always, Antonio Damasio stuff is quite interesting, and I'm happy to talk about that more. As always, find me on the internet, Facebook, wherever. If you want to know more about feelings and emotions and how to work with them, happy to talk. This is what I do all day long, and look forward to your responses. Have a great day.